What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. And today I want to talk about something I came across recently that actually took me back to a clip I'd seen a while ago. It was on Onawami Brown's channel. He was live with Anton Daniels and Gilbert Arenas, and Gilbert was breaking down a deal. And I want to zero in on one specific part of that conversation. Now, Onawami did a 4-hour live stream about 10 months ago, and I'll throw up a screenshot of that stream on screen right now. If you want to watch the full thing, go check it out on his channel. Make sure you're subscribed over there. But today, we're focusing on this because Anton Daniels has since reacted to everything surrounding Gilbert and what's been unfolding with this situation. And when I went back and watched it, something stood out. Anton was actually present during that live when Onawami and Gilbert were having this conversation. And looking at it now, 10 months later, with the deal expired and the dust fully settled, some of what Gilbert said is holding up. One thing in particular I want you to pay close attention to. Gilbert made a claim that Underdog would not be able to use Skip Bayless and his crew once his contract ran out. But if you've been watching the most recent episodes, you've seen Skip and his crew still showing up. So before we get into Anton's reaction, let's hear exactly what Gilbert said in this clip right here.
What point did you lose control though?
What do you mean?
Because you don't, based off of what you were saying, you don't get to determine how the show goes. You know what I'm saying? Because okay, the partnership, I get, you didn't really understand exactly how big the platform was gonna get. I think you undersold yourself because you didn't realize how great you was as a content creator, honestly. And I've given you props. I've always celebrated you and said that I think that you are incredible and that you got the #1 basketball show in the whole 9 yards. But at what point in this infrastructure deal did you give up the control to where you can't determine, hey, no, I'm executive producing this. I'm controlling my own IP. I determine how many times we stream. I determine how we want to add a football show. At what point did that part come in is what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay, so I had 50% of both shows. So basically any show I produce under No Chill Productions. So No Chill Production is what 50-50. They don't have rights to Gilbert Arenas. So this channel, anything I do with my name and likeness outside of No Chill Productions, I own 100%. So I'm not exclusive to doing deals, right, with other people. So I never really had control. I didn't want control of thumbnails and all that because I didn't really know about it. I didn't really care. Just you do what you need to do. I'll learn on the way when my contract is up, which is up in 10 months from now. I own all the equipment.
You get to keep everything.
So basically my deal is actually this. I own all the equipment. Now, when it comes to the show itself, remember, it's a concept.
Right.
It's not real. 50% is 50% is real if we sell it. Now, if I walk away, what do they have? They can't use Gil's Arena name. They can't use Gil's Arena crew. That's part of my deal. They can't use Skip Bayless and the crew. That's part of my deal. So that means they will have to start brand new with a whole different cast and everything.
So I'll definitely be watching closely to see whether they continue using Nick Young, Kenyon Martin, Rashard McCants, and Brendan Haywood, because right now they're doing exactly what Gilbert said they wouldn't be able to do. That thing he said couldn't happen, it's happening. But here's where it gets a little murky. Gil also mentioned that those guys are still under contract with Underdog, so that raises a fair question. How would they not be able to use them? For that restriction to make sense, the contract language would have to say something very specific, something along the lines of, in the event Gilbert is no longer with the company, and prior to the other contracts expiring, if both parties go their separate ways, then Underdog loses the right to use certain talent. But based on what we're actually seeing play out, it doesn't read that way at all. The show is still going, and Skip Bayless is now sitting in the seat that used to belong to Gilbert. So whatever the contract says, the operation clearly hasn't stopped. With that said, let's get into Anton Daniels' reaction, because he had some things to say about everything that's been going on, and it's worth breaking down.
Is the main attraction. It just is what it is. People can get upset about it. They can feel some type of way about it, but there's always going to be a main, right? Stephen A is First Take. Gilbert Arenas is Gil's Arena / the Arena. And it doesn't mean that everybody else don't contribute or that they don't have great takes or all of this other type of stuff. But in my personal opinion, there is no arena. And of course, they're going to try to keep the show going and all of this other stuff. And I hope that everybody makes a lot of money and all of that. But from my perspective, is Gil, and that's the main thing that everybody came to see. And then it's everybody else. It's probably, if I were Gil, this is what I would do. All right. He went through the crash test and he learned, right? I said that he should have owned 100% of the show and he should have been controlling it. He said, well, I didn't know any different. I didn't know any better. And so I needed them to come in and build the infrastructure, which is logical. You know what I'm saying? You don't know what you don't know. They brought in, built the infrastructure, but he learned. He learned throughout the entire process how you're supposed to move more effectively going forward in the future. So all of this time, they made the money. Everybody got their bag. You got your sponsorships. If I were Gil this time, I would keep 100% ownership and I would license it out. Everything would just be based off of sponsors, and I would take more control over my platform. And I know, see, the tale between two worlds is ownership versus money. Ownership versus money. This is the real conversation that we all should be having and that nobody is having. And everybody is saying, see, I told you they was going to take it. Yeah, I mean, I was the first person to say it, to be honest with you. But at the same time, once he started having a conversation, it made sense because it's like, well, listen, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what I'm building and all of this stuff. So maybe I should give up some ownership and maybe I should let them come in and do it because they're the ones that's putting up all of the money. That way I don't have to put up my own money. I don't have to do this. And I didn't even know if it was going to work or not. And it worked. It blew up. But now what did you learn from this situation?
Now, I wanted to pull some of Anton's reaction into this. Not his entire video, but enough to give context because he was actually present on that live stream and his perspective matters here. And look, this is a conversation that comes up a lot when it comes to creators and corporations. These companies are often looking to acquire your intellectual property. Gilbert probably walked into that deal thinking it was a genuine partnership, but when you don't know what you don't know, the other side is already thinking about what contract language they can slip in that protects them if things go sideways. They're thinking about clauses that could work against you if you ever violate one of their policies or if the relationship breaks down. When a company is fronting the money, building out studios, covering salaries, handling infrastructure, you can bet the contract language is going to be written heavily in their favor. So now the question becomes, can they use those guys on Gil's Arena, or will everything migrate back to a different setup? There's still a lot of uncertainty here. Gil says they can't use the crew, but from what we're seeing, it looks like they are. Those guys are still under contract with Underdog, so even if Gilbert wanted to challenge that, could he? Would it even be worth pursuing? And then there's the longer-term question around Skip Bayless and where this goes over the next 2 or 3 years. The show has still been performing, but what made it work originally was something very specific, that raw, unfiltered energy of guys going live every single day. Remember what Rashard McCann said recently? Kenyon got him to say something on air that raised a few eyebrows. Would that kind of moment even be tolerated on a bigger platform? Because when you had your own channel in full creative control, that was just part of the culture. And keep in mind what that operation looked like at its peak. Gilbert was trying to pay everybody's salaries, and the HOA at his house was complaining because the crew was pulling up so regularly for live streams that the neighbors had a problem with it. That's how committed they were to that daily grind. But hopefully, Gilbert took some real lessons away from all of this, understanding both the upside and the downside of that kind of deal. And that's the part that stings a little. I just wish he'd had someone in his corner who knew the business side. Not that Gilbert isn't smart, but you don't know what you don't know. And if you don't have someone you trust who understands contract law and IP ownership, You can end up walking into a marriage with a company like Underdog without fully understanding what you're signing away. That situation actually reminds me of what Country Wayne recently talked about. He's been doing over 1.4 billion views on Facebook, and he said Hollywood came knocking, not just to collaborate, but because they wanted to understand his formula. They wanted control of his IP. He said the number he'd need was $500 million, and they weren't willing to go there. And honestly, that's exactly what they were always after. When studios try to recreate that kind of content with their own writers, it rarely lands because those writers weren't living that life. Country Wayne skits work because they're rooted in real experience. There's a natural blend of comedy and authenticity that only works because he's actually been in those situations. And he understands his value well enough to say, if you want access to this, bring $500 million to the table. And even then, he probably wouldn't hand over full control, more likely a licensing arrangement. And I'm right there with Anton on that point. You can license your content without giving up ownership. Look at Pat McAfee. He went to ESPN and he's still living on his own YouTube channel. He didn't hand them everything. He let them see that he commands a loyal audience at a specific time of day, and that's what they're paying for. That's the approach I wish Gilbert had taken. License the access, keep the ownership. Instead, it looks like Underdog ended up holding most of the cards. Let me know what you think about all of this down in the comments.